Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
A very large country in the world has been booted from the Olympic Games.
You can say it.
No, Russia.
Yeah, right.
If that country has been removed, supposedly because of doping issues.
Well, no, not supposedly. It is because of doping issues.
Yeah,
So
right.
And
my
there were
point is,
doping issues that were proven. I mean, it wasn't speculation. It was legitimately proven.
Right.
yes. But my point is, we also know what's going on, with doping in
Yeah.
certain countries.
Although,
And
in
we
our
need
careers,
action
it was
to be
happening.
taken.
It was
What?
happening during our careers, but we didn't know about it. We did, we were, well, I didn't know about it. I wasn't aware that there were people that I was competing against that were doing drugs, and now I know.
But how many? I didn't know anybody.
I don't know how many, but I do know that there were countries that was what they were doing. I mean, Finland had issues with this. I mean,
Mhm.
because of Marty Vino, and we now know what was going on, and plus talking to athletes from the time, I
Yeah.
that was going on. I know that there's certain athletes in this country.
You've
Go
seen
ahead.
the documentary Icarus, right?
I've got it on my playlist, but I've never brought myself to watch it because I just don't
Oh,
want to
you,
get
oh,
that
you,
pissed off.
you got to watch it. I mean, because it goes.
Well,
I'm bringing up.
I know a couple of the people that, the Russians that basically were part of the story. They run track meets here in Boulder, and I've talked to them, and basically they don't want anybody. They've changed their name of the results so nobody will know where they are.
Oh,
How
really?
nervous
That's
they
a,
are about this whole thing.
yeah, yeah. There are others. I mean, we could name names because it's all out in the public now. I mean, Eddie Hellebuck, got
Yeah.
busted, and then he denied, as they all do, of course. And he finally came clean years later, publicly, and it was an interesting explanation. I thought he had a come to Jesus moment, I think, and he realized, I've been lying to the rest of the world, and they still, despite having been tested positive, and that's proof that you're guilty. It's hard to deny that. But he realized he was going to have to lie to his children who were now coming of age and would know the story and come and say, "Hey, Dad, what's the truth?" And he realized he couldn't lie to his kids, and so he could no longer keep trying to lie to the general public. And so that's just one example. There were many others. I mean, remember the Chinese coach Ma?
And
Was it Ma?
it is women. And
Right. God knows what
And
they were
like
taking
true.
back then, but my God, they were running didn't a couple of them run under 30 minutes for a 10K back then.
yeah, and they had a weekend or a week rather where they ran a whole bunch of races that were just like unbelievable, and our eyes were
Hmm.
bugging out, and we sort of no, this can't be. They're not even
Right.
getting tired.
Yeah. It was
But
crazy.
it
So,
seems like, I think what I'm saying though is a state, a
mhm.
country was
Oh
banned
yeah.
from the games, and it's been quite a while, but nothing's been done. I see a country that's really a major offender, but it's the agents, I think, paying off a federation.
Well,
Isn't that what's
that
going
is
on?
part of it. Um, I've heard, I don't know that it's true, but I've heard that there are gangsters involved in all of this, that, moving the drugs around and, getting skimming money from the athletes and the agents. But, I don't know how much truth there is in that, but you start getting these conspiracy theories
Yeah.
anytime you see something strange going on, and people start, explaining it with conspiracy theories. And
Well,
that's a bad thing. When we don't know what to trust, we start making up truth.
exactly. I mean, that's part of the human condition is we make up something to fill in the void
Hmm.
of, and not, we have small pieces of information about a story, but what we don't know, we'll make up something to so that all the connecting pieces make sense. And one thing we can be assured is whatever it is we make up is probably going to be wrong,
Oh yeah.
right? Somebody's late, supposed to meet us somewhere. Me, I show up late, right, to this morning, and you say, "Where the hell's Jack? Ah, he's always late. Da, da, da. He's probably da da da,
No,
whatever."
we didn't
And
do that. We just figured
no,
you.
no, I just say that as an example, but I mean anybody, right? So it's a part of the human condition to kind of make up pieces to make sense of an entire picture, and the things that we make up, it's a slippery slope. We need to catch ourselves when we do this. I know, I think we all do. It's part of the human condition, but usually whatever we make up is more than often wrong. So it's catch
Well, yeah, if
ourselves
you made it up,
doing it.
you're not gonna be able to guess all of the
Right, right.
part. So you got to guess wrong on at least some of it.
Yeah, just wait and keep gathering information until we know the truth. Although, as Andre Agassi's ad for Canon cameras was, and this is kind of a very dangerous thing too, but it's a reality, it seems, is that, I don't know if you remember that, but the tagline of that ad was "Perception is reality." And one can make a strong argument that in today's world, that's it. I mean, look what's going on in the political realm here in the United States.
Well,
Perception is reality.
even our politicians are saying what they say is reality, not what you see.
Yeah, my point exactly. Yeah. That idea of organized crime, by the way, now meddling in running it, because there's not enough money in the sport over maybe in Europe and the
Well,
United
I mean,
States.
or it'd be
But
like in Africa, there'd be
in
organized.
Africa, yeah, that's I had
The
heard that
money
too.
there is,
Right.
they could win one race and make more money than their extended family ever would make.
Exactly. And whatever organized crime, what we call organized crime, it could, I don't know, who knows, maybe it's some kind of an organization of guys who are just, manipulating the system between the agents that you mentioned, Bill, the athletes themselves, and, follow the money. Deep,
Pharmacists and
deep
Who's
throat
in
said it best,
charge?
right? Follow the money.
So Jack and Benji and Ron, who's in charge? We know how come no action has been taken, and I think that's the big issue. And I wonder if for Russia, I understand we have a new leader of the Olympic Games, and I understand that decision was partially predicated on who favored Russia coming back into participation in the Olympic Games and who didn't. And perhaps the one who didn't, I don't know, or maybe Bach.
Does she, or is she in favor of it, or is she in favor of keeping them out until they clean up their act?
No, no, I
I,
think she's in favor of bringing them in, and I think Bach,
okay.
the German leader of the IOC, was in favor of Russia
Yeah.
coming back to
Yeah.
participate. I mean, how long do you ban a country? 100 years, 10 years? I mean, it's very political, and we're supposed to be free of politics in the Olympic Games.
Well, yeah, but I
You're
mean,
right.
yeah, I
That's
mean,
Supposed
supposed.
to be.
yeah, I mean, and as long as it's a national, spectacle where, one team's competing against another team by a nation, then the politics are going to be there. I mean, we on NBC when they have every day they show you how many medals the U.S. has got versus
Right.
China versus, and as long as you have that, it's going to be there's going to be pressure from the countries to try to get those,
Yeah.
nationalistic displays.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And in a sense, that's what keeps us alive as a sport, is because if we don't have spectators pushing for us to perform better than somebody else,
Sure.
the
Go all the
sport's
way
done.
back to go back to the 36 Berlin Games, right? I mean, Hitler, that was all about airing in the global scene the supremacy of his Aryan race.
Hmm.
And even before then, I mean, it was it's been politicized from day one, despite Baron de Coubertin's the Olympic creed, right? Is not about winning, it's about taking part,
But you know
doing the
what
best
else,
you can.
Jack? You know
Hmm?
what else? I think it's astounding and wonderful how clean the Americans are. Going back a long time.
Well,
I just think it's
I would say,
astounding.
Billy, it's
Connor
not so
Mann,
much they've been clean as they've been careful.
That's a
I,
good
but
point. Yeah.
I don't really see that, Benji.
Well, I know for a fact several Americans that have cheated.
You mean right
I
that
think
are
for the
currently
most part,
cheating?
yeah, I think for the most part, the Americans have been cleaned.
For the most part, yeah,
But
but I do know that it's not, we have not
I
been
mean,
Puritans.
Benji and we've talked about this, and yeah, we know because of our association with Nike that there was some, and I think it was mostly Nike athletes, probably getting, but I don't know when you look at the other top performers in America during our era, I think for the most part, those athletes were clean.
Yeah, and I don't think as a
But,
country we've ever been, we haven't had a
and
national program.
I'm talking the distance runners. I know
Oh yeah,
that,
distance runners. I don't think there's ever been
yeah,
a, national program like in Russia where the country itself was producing, like East Germany too. I mean,
Hmm.
essentially they had a plan, and it
Right.
was a
yeah.
national plan. In our country, what's happened is individual athletes as well as individual coaches have had plans, and we've not I mean, if you want to not talk just distance, I mean, you look at the sprinters and yeah, I mean, do we have
Yeah.
clean?
I
I
mean,
mean, it's
who was
sometimes
the
do we have
Well,
any?
the throwers, but when I lived in Eugene, I mean, it's such a small community, the athletic, it's such a small community up there. You were always hearing discussions about who's doing what, and all the heating that was going on. It's just,
Yeah, the
I mean, you look
throwers.
at what was
Yeah,
the throwers were especially, yeah. I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, I actually roomed with one at one of the TAC conventions, and he got out his drugs and showed them to me. He was doing them daily, and he
well,
said,
yeah,
if
that's the
I'm
way
going
it
to do
was.
this, I've got to be taking, if I want to be competitive, this is the only way. And
So stupid.
he was just straight up with me.
It's such a dead end street.
Yeah. And the thing that people argue about, let's let everybody do it. Let's have an open, drug enhanced sport. And they don't
well,
think
isn't
about the health aspects of it.
People die.
Yes.
isn't
I
that
was going to
being
say my health is more important than performance.
Yeah.
well, that
So
being said, I mean, who is it that's proposed this idea of an open,
Well, you
dirty
just you hear
sport?
spec you hear,
A pharmaceutical company.
well, not well, yeah, maybe, but
yeah,
you'll hear, like, if you're crazy enough to go and read the comments at Let's Run, you'll see somebody saying it.
No, I thought it's already been proposed. Somebody's
Oh yeah,
offering to put up that money.
there's somebody that's going to put on a competition, and I can't remember who it is. And it's basically you can do whatever you want, and
Right, right.
you're encouraged to do whatever you want. I
Yeah,
haven't
and I think
seen.
it's, I mean, there's a big chunk of money behind this. I mean, it won't go very far. It'll last for a
I
year or
hope
two,
it
and then they'll
won't.
run out of money. But there were years and years ago, Sports Illustrated did a big story on performance, and this is back in the 90s. I don't know if you remember the cover, and it had an arm, in the flex position, and in the hand of the arm was a hypodermic needle about to go into the bicep.
Yep.
And they did a straw poll for that article and asked a number of athletes anonymously um, if they would take a drug that would guarantee them, athletic high levels of success, Olympic championships, and all the things that come with it. But there's something like a 50% chance you'll die in your 50s from it. And more than 90% of the athletes queried in this straw pool said, I'd take that chance.
And
So,
they've done that at
I
the
remember
Olympics.
that article. Yeah.
They've done that kind of survey at the Olympics many times.
okay.
And it's very consistent that the
Is it?
athletes will say, I'll take the Faustus deal and hope that I can find a loophole later.
That's what it is. Faustian bargain, yeah.
I
Uh,
think in some countries, the money that can go to an Olympic athlete is life-changing.
yeah.
And obviously, this is also what's happening with the doping issue now in marathoning and distance running and everything. But we're a rich country. We don't need to do that. We can find a way without doing that. And so I think we need the leadership. The leadership is lacking, really. And it's not the athletes or the coaches by and large. I think it's the people that control them. Are the Olympics so important that you have to let yourself fall down to that level?
Well, each
It
individual,
shouldn't be for us.
I
Well,
think it's an
yeah, for
individual.
marathoning, it's not the Olympics, it's the majors.
Now it is that, yeah, and that has changed. But if you look at the individual, it's a morality issue, really. If you look at athletes across the sports, look, A-Rod was the first big money pro athlete. Got a $250 million, that's a rounding error of some of these guys now. But he eventually started taking drugs to keep up because of the expectations of him to continue to perform at the level necessary to justify those obscene numbers. Um, and athletes, each of them find themselves in whatever circumstance situation they find themselves in, and each individual has to make that decision. Am I going to cheat or am I not? Right?
And and one of it is you come to a point in your career where you're starting to not be as good as you should be,
Mhm.
want to be. I shouldn't say should be, is want to be,
Right.
and you start getting this pressure. I moved to Boulder in '85, and I was, my career was pretty much done. I hadn't yet admitted that. I was still thinking I could get everything back together.
Sure.
And we were at a party, and this guy kind of sidles up to me and he says, "You're not been running like you have in the past." And I said, "Yeah, it's just the way it is. I'm trying to get back. I've had plantar fasciitis and I'm trying to." And he said, "We can get you back there. We can get you growth hormones and some other things, and we can get you back there." And I sort of moved over to another part of the room. But there are people out there that they'll see an opportunity and they'll, you know, like the devil, they'll come up and make you the offer.
Yeah,
You'll
interesting.
pay for it later in life. And that's why for a long time, I couldn't believe Lance Armstrong would cheat because I'd had cancer. I'd had prostate cancer, and I couldn't
Yeah,
believe somebody would voluntarily, who had also had cancer, do this to himself. And yet he did.
yeah. Yeah, go figure. And
Oh,
some of the biggest losers in that whole caper were especially the younger people, but cancer people who had survived their cancers or still being treated for it, but held him up as an icon
right.
for, there's opportunities to survive this, and you can still live a full vital life after cancer. And he was kind of the poster child for all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And just I mean, that was to me, one of the biggest violations of that entire
yeah.
operation.
I mean, but some people are just so narcissistic. They don't believe that it's going to happen to them.
Yeah, yeah,
I think we were lucky, our generation from the 70s,
Yeah.
60s, 70s, weren't we?
Yeah,
It-
we
it-
we were we were quite lucky. I mean, we were able to be competitive with anybody in the world. We were able to make a living. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was sufficient money, and
yeah,
that's all we really needed. And we enjoyed what we were doing, and we didn't have to struggle with shoe companies. Basically, they would help give us shoes and sometimes give us money. I mean, these days it's a struggle. You have the rules you have to follow. You have to pay a lot of money to get into the championships. I mean, the half marathon championship down in Atlanta, I think back in March, it was like $125 entry fee. And then this is to run in the U.S. championships. You have to pay a big entry fee. I
a
mean,
little out of control, some of
yeah,
the
I mean, and
leadership, a little
I
out of
know
control
guys that are
indeed.
running in the 209s that can't get free shoes.
We
Oh,
had
it's
the
just
best
insane.
of all possible running worlds. We
Yeah,
did.
we lived in a sweet
We're
spot.
lucky.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
Yeah.
And now we get to
Hey,
make fun of what's going on.
so changing the topic a little bit, one thing would be, I think, interesting for people who listen to our podcast. Now, we've really never discussed how we tapered for our marathons, when we began our taper, and what we ate during our taper. The couple of days before, because I'm sure that each of us probably had a little different approach.
I didn't do much of a taper at all myself. I would go just the last week, pretty much.
I still ended up, I would start my week on my training on Mondays, but I would still end up with 70 to 80 miles counting the marathon the week of
I'd
the.
do 50 to 70, depending on the week and depending
We
on
were
Okay,
the
yeah.
same. We were the same. We
yeah,
we all pushed our training right to the very end because exercise science wasn't as developed. I think
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons why runners can excel more today is for that reason. Coaching is at a higher and higher level, more coaches from high school to collegiate. These coaches are really, really on the ball today. And we were winging it. We were kind of having fun, and it worked a lot of the time. We could get away with a lot. What
Well,
you
we
do,
weren't running for times as much as we were running for competition. And since we were all doing kind
yes,
of the same thing, it
yeah.
made sense for us to do the same thing.
So,
But we were all
Ben,
pretty even too. We were pretty even,
Yeah.
because we were all mainly sea level born athletes,
Yeah.
Now and then some altitude born athlete would come in and they'd be a notch better. And we saw that like people like Ed Eyestone, Henry Marsh, the Utahns, or someone from Colorado, and Frank Shorter going to altitude along with Galloway and Batchelor and proving that this works. This
Yeah.
training works. So that's
well, Galloway and
everybody.
Baxter are, those guys. I said Baxter, Bachelor, but there was that big group there in Gainesville for a long time, and then you had Bill, you guys had a pretty big crowd in Boston, between you and Tom and
There were gatherings. I mean, we had a good group of guys in Atlanta Track Club. I mean,
You got, yeah,
the Hummel Toads back out in Southern
San
California.
Diego. Yeah.
But it was the beginning. It was we were the first distance group to be organized, where these little clubs popping up in Atlanta, Colorado, New England, Greater Boston Track Club, and out of that grew the Nike.
Northwest.
Yes, Alberto Salazar, who grew up with Greater Boston Track Club at the age of 15, running with us. I remember because I remember him training with us and everything. And out of that, now we have shoe company funded, and that you were part of that, Jack. You work with the New Balance team along with Bob Hodge, and all of Greater Boston went with New Balance. I was already running for Asics and everything. So we all ended up being shoe company athletes, which is where it is today. I wish it would go open more, and I like what Michael Johnson is doing, putting that money up. And for the athletes today, I love track and field. I think we all do. And we remember those days, the golden era, which I think is still here because our athletes are still phenomenal, still producing the goods.
Bill, what do you guys think of this Michael Johnson enterprise and what's his name? Also, Serena Williams' husband putting up a boatload of money for professional. That was the one I was thinking was, yeah, the Reddit, founded Reddit. Um,
We need these wealthy people in the United States who love the intelligence and competitiveness of these athletes as leading athletes of the country. And I
mhm.
saw that I think it was it Jeff Bezos' wife who put up a lot of her own money and put on a women's only track meet that
Yeah.
was really high powered and intense. And we need that kind of leadership, because track and field isn't as strong as it was, back in the 60s, I think, and that sort of thing. But I think the athletes are.
Yeah.
It's whether has the society, have we lost focus? Do we care too much about some other sports which are only American sports? For me, I like the wider scope. I like soccer because it's global. I like athletics because it's global. Certain sports that we put our money into. I mean, what do you guys think? Am I?
Well, sports is entertainment and people
I
pay
mean, and we
the
have we
money.
forget about that. I mean, Pre kind of had that knowledge that he was an entertainer. He was there to put
Who?
on a show. Prefontaine.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah,
And that
I'll
was,
comment on Michael Johnson's. I like the format in a sense. I mean, I like the two different competitions, and you merge them. I like that idea. But as a entertainment, it has some drawbacks in that there's a lot of dead time.
mhm.
Maybe there's interesting things happening if you're in the stadium, but watching it on television, it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to watch this on replay because I don't need to listen to these people for 30 minutes between every event. And I think that's a bad thing for them. I don't know how they're going to work around that.
Yeah. I
bring in
watch
some
everything on
guests.
TiVo.
Bring in some good guests who can really talk the
Well,
sport.
yeah, but I mean, after you have the first opening half hour of talking, doing it in between, half hour here, half hour there, like they'll have like maybe six competitions over 3 hours. That's a lot of dead time. And
Yeah,
there's not much you can say after a while that you haven't already said. I mean, I've had people complain about Larry Rawson talking about, if you go when he's talking about marathons. So if you go out and you run, one lap,
Well,
400-meter track to,
yeah, yeah.
and that's just his way of explaining it. But
yeah,
if you've heard it, 20 times, you start getting less interested in that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I mean, tr other than through the Olympic Games and now the World Championships to a lesser degree, as a global sport or even as a national sport, it's people who were in the sport in high school or whatever, or now as adults have kids who are in the sport, so they show an interest in it. But otherwise, it's track and field and running in general, despite the number of participants
I
now on
don't
the global
agree,
scale,
Jack.
it's a
I
minor
don't
sport.
agree.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
agree.
it's a
Do you ever watch the
participation
Diamond
sport
League?
now.
The Diamond League,
Yeah,
global, global.
we
Yeah,
Do you,
watch it,
but Billy,
but
right now to watch the Diamond League, it's $30 a month.
I know it's too expensive, but still, it exists. It's the
But
whole.
that but my point is that's going to make it have less spectators.
You just he just made a good point too, right?
Yeah.
$30 too much to watch a Diamond League meet?
What does it cost to watch a football game or a baseball game?
Yeah. It's
So Jack, you coach also. You're still coaching, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Okay. All right. So and I've been coaching quite a while as well. What do you think a high school kid looking at the times they see today, what inspires them or motivates them to believe that they can accomplish what the four of us achieved during our careers? Because when we were young, we were looking up and, we were, for, I think for Benji and I, a little bit younger, we looked at Jim Ryan as kind of, we wanted to be the pilot. What do you think kids today, I mean, Ingrid Britz, look at, is he your inspiration? Do you think that, look at how fast a guy like him or Connor Mance, how fast these guys are running? Do you think they lose hope that they could one day become them? I mean, how do you think these kids today view accelerating or reaching, that level of running? Because I would be discouraged seeing the times that you see today. I mean, we're all three in our seven, and you look at how fast they're running. I'm going, no, the times today are just insanely fast, and I don't know if I would aspire to become a, a runner. Looking at trying to reach the level that these kids or these athletes are running.
Well, from a coaching perspective, for me, and I think it might come down to good coaching, good leadership for these young kids to train them so as to not get out over their skis. You take somebody training for their first marathon, and their longest run has been 6 miles or 8 miles or whatever, and they're looking at the schedule, 20 weeks schedule, and a month I have to be 15 miles, and 2 months I have to be running 20. It's inconceivable to them at this point in time. So you get them to be looking at the right time frames or whatever, and also what you use to measure your own success. Again,
No, I mean, so to the point that I was talking about, I mean, young kids that I coach in high school, it's just got to be incredibly overwhelming to look at the times that athletes are running today to think,
Well, you
I
look at
want,
a 15-year-old kid running sub 4 in Australia.
yeah,
But Benji and Ron, there are always exceptions to the rule, these exceptional talents. I don't think I think that youth want to be, this is a team sport.
I call them individual sports because, unlike
There's both.
football or
Yeah,
baseball or basketball, you don't need a
right.
teammate out there to help you. I mean, I trained 90% of my career by myself. So it
No,
wasn't a team thing. It was an individual thing.
yeah, I see there's both, Ron. I totally agree. But my point is that there's always the superstars and some youngster you can't compare yourself to. When I was in high school, I couldn't compare myself to a Marty LaCory who was a
Yeah.
high schooler, ran sub four. I ran 4:28 for the mile, point 0.8. And I was pretty happy with that. And so I think we have to, everything is about doing your best. And and I think the numbers are huge, much bigger today than in our day. 500,000 young American boys and girls
Yeah.
run country, high school. And I see a bright future for this sport, and not everyone's setting the records. There's
I
always
don't know. I don't know that the sport is growing. I think it's just now the population has expanded. It's a larger population, so I think there's more participation just because virtual numbers. What my point is, I mean, I would be, if I'm a high school kid and I'm looking at the times that, I mean, the Florida on the boys' side, they had the 3As tips this morning, and three of the boys were under 9 minutes. I mean, that was back in our day. That was really,
That was a
exceptional.
very good rate. I mean, I didn't get under 9 minutes for 2 miles until I was well into my pro career. Of course,
yeah.
I didn't run 2 miles very often, but
Well, yeah, I know, but that's the thing. We didn't run that often, but I didn't run sub 9 minutes for 2 miles until I was out of college.
yeah, I was the same thing.
I think shoes. The
But
shoes
yeah,
play a role too.
a lot of the shoes have changed. We can't even look at times anymore and say, I was thinking this morning about, I ran my PRs for the mile and the 800 and on dirt tracks with 1/2 inch spikes. And
So
they weren't early in the meet, so it was a soft dirt track.